Hello and welcome to today's English lesson. My name is Stuart. In today's lesson, we're looking at words and vocabulary we use in English when we talk about towns and cities. Let's go to the intro. Now, as I said, today's lesson is looking at words that we use to talk about towns and cities, or towns and cities and regions as well. And all of these words here will come in handy if you have an exam that you need to speak about this particular topic, if you need to describe a city or a town, perhaps where you come from, or just in general in English if you want to improve your vocabulary and be able to talk about this topic fluently, then these are some of the words for you. Now, we'll have a look at the groups of words and I'll do my best to explain what these words mean and how we use them in English. So for example, the first group of words we've got city centre, downtown, midtown, uptown and CBD. Now the first word here, city centre, when we talk about cities or towns, we normally refer to the centre as being the main hub of the city, the main area. Where I come from in Australia, the cities always have a centre, which is the business and financial district, a lot of shops as well, a lot of activity in the streets, but people don't normally live in the city centre in Australia. People live in residential areas, which I'll show you in a minute what they are, or suburbs. But the city centre, or the CBD, the Central Business District, or city centre, normally in Australia that's what we refer to, okay? We talk about that city centre. But you'll quite often hear the word downtown, midtown and uptown referring to cities as well. Downtown means the centre, but normally they use that more in American English, in the States, Canada perhaps, when they talk about downtown, meaning the centre. You'll also hear the word midtown and uptown as well, referring to different parts of the city. But as I said, in Australia, normally we talk about the city centre. Downtown, midtown, uptown, referring to the USA, Canada, North America. CBD, Central Business District, as I said, where all the businesses are, where people come in to work every day, the CBD. We can also refer to inner city, outskirts, inner ring and outer ring when we're talking about cities and towns as well. The inner city, obviously again, that centre part of the city. The outskirts of the city are the areas on the outer part of the city, so the centre. When the cities go out, you have the outskirts. The inner ring, inner city or inner ring, again that part in the middle, and the outer ring. So outskirts, outer ring, inner city, inner ring are similar in that meaning there, okay? Now, we also talk about residential, industrial, built up and suburban areas when we talk about cities. So, for example, residential areas, obviously where people reside, where people live, residential areas, houses, flats, apartment blocks, smaller shops, restaurants, residential areas. Industrial areas where there are factories, where people are producing things, making things. A lot of activity with trucks and lorries coming in and out. People are doing a lot of business activity in the industrial areas. Built up areas where there's a lot of infrastructure, a lot of maybe housing activity, shops, again, built up areas where traffic can also be a problem, built up areas, and suburban areas. Now, remember I said in Australia we have the centre of the city, the CBD, and then we have the suburbs which spread out from the city. So in Perth, where I come from, which is on the coast, you have the centre of the city, centre of Perth, and then the suburbs go north and they go south mainly. There are some suburbs that go east as well, but mainly they go up and they go down, okay? So they spread. Those are called suburbs, and it's a suburban area, okay? Now, neighbourhood, suburb, district, borough, quarter, precinct and ward. Now, neighbourhood, the area that you live is your neighbourhood. Maybe you have a neighbourhood school, neighbourhood shops, neighbourhood friends, okay, in your neighbourhood. Suburb, when I lived in Australia, I lived in a suburb called Carrinup. So the city centre was about 20 kilometres away, and my suburb was, you had to catch a bus to go into the centre, or you had to get another way into the city centre because we lived in suburbs, okay? My neighbourhood, and it was in a suburb called Carrinup, as I said. We also use the word district, borough, quarter, precinct and ward when we're referring to towns and cities. District is an area of different suburbs can make up a district. It's an area of different suburbs or different neighbourhoods can form a district. You can also have a shopping district, okay, as well. Borough, in the UK, a city like London is divided into boroughs for administrative purposes primarily, I suppose. Quarter, you will hear the word quarter, especially with older type cities. You'll hear that some cities have a French quarter or a Latin quarter, or maybe if it's divided into different religions, they have a Jewish quarter or a Christian quarter, etc. Then we have the word precinct. Now, this word varies in meaning. Precinct can be an area where there's shops as well, pedestrian precinct, shopping precinct, but it can also be a political area as well, where maybe you have a police station in a certain type of precinct, okay? It can be a precinct. And in that sense, it's similar to this word here, ward, okay? Precinct and ward, where cities are divided politically. Again, where I come from, Perth is divided into different areas, and inside those areas we have wards where people politically represent different wards inside that particular city. Now, these words here are negative words that we use when we talk about cities. So, for example, wasteland, slum, ghetto, no-go area, shanty town, suburbia. So wasteland is part of a city or town where there's no activity, there's no housing, perhaps there's vacant land, the land is not used for any specific purpose, maybe there was some type of activity in the past and now it's been abandoned. It can become a wasteland. Slum is normally a poorer neighbourhood inside a city, a slum where people don't have maybe a lot of money, maybe they have a lot of social problems, they're living in a slum. The housing normally is very bad quality. Ghetto we refer to an area where a particular ethnic group lives. In some European cities, there are certain ethnic groups living in certain areas. It's a negative word when you talk about a ghetto. No-go area, as the name suggests, it's an area that you don't want to go to or you shouldn't go to, perhaps because it's a dangerous area, a lot of crime, drug use, and maybe you're not going to be safe in that area, so it's a no-go area. Shanty Town is an area of a city, especially on some of the big cities around the world. They have shanty towns where people erect illegal housing and they don't have access to water or electricity. They just use any material they can to build some type of accommodation for their family. And many people do the same thing, and you end up with a shanty town, okay? And suburbia also has a negative connotation. Suburbia has the idea that it's a boring area in the suburbs where there's no life, nothing ever happens, people are bored, there's no activity, they're living in suburbia, okay, as opposed to the dynamic center of the cities where a lot of things happen. Suburbia, it's where, you know, the children grow up and people go to work every day, and there's no life in suburbia. These words here, the last four, housing estates, council estates, gated communities, and dormitory towns or dormitory cities. Housing estates, where there is obviously housing is built. Again, in Australia, there are a lot of new housing developments or housing estates where people move to, normally their first home. Young couples move into housing estates. Council estates, where the council or the town hall builds housing to help people have access to housing. So perhaps they don't have a good job, or they're unemployed and they don't have access to maybe a mortgage from the bank. So they are forced to live in council estates or council housing. Gated communities. In some of the more dangerous cities in the world, people live in gated communities for security purposes. Normally it's an area where the houses, to get into the area, you have to pass some type of security control to get into the gated community where people feel safe. Again, if there's a lot of violence in the city, I don't know any cities off the top of my head, but people do live in gated communities. And dormitory towns, again, on big cities, dormitory towns pop up where the cost of living is cheaper, but people travel to and from work every day. They commute. So they sleep in the dormitory town, hence the name, dormitory town. And they travel to and from work every day. So dormitory towns. So all of these words we can use in English when we talk about towns and cities. Now, thank you very much for watching the lesson. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them in the section below. Give the video a thumbs up if you liked it. Remember to hit that share button. Share the video with your friends if they are also learning English. And I'll see you in the next video lesson. Have a good day. Bye.